Welcome back to our 2020 MANA virtual conference. We are so pleased to have with us today the Chief Executive Officer of the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC, Sindy Benavides. Sindy is a longtime political advocate, woman of the people. She and the LULAC organization serve on the boards of the National Hispanic Leadership Agenda and the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility, alongside MANA. And through this conversation, we just want for you to get to know Sindy, for you to hear about her work, the work that LULAC is doing, and then of course how our MANA chapters can engage at a local level with LULAC chapters, and so that we can all work together and make sure that the rising tide is lifting all boats as we go along. So Sindy, thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
Amy, thank you so much for having me, for your leadership and leading MANA to the members, and also just a warm hello to the hermanitas.
So first, tell us about LULAC. Tell us about your role, and even though sometimes it may seem a little redundant because everyone knows LULAC, tell us what the organization does, what your role is, and how that work takes shape.
Sure. So LULAC is the League of United Latin American Citizens. We are the oldest and largest national Latino civil rights organization. When you look at national civil rights organization, we are the only organization that is composed of members. So we have members similar to MANA that live across our 50 states. In Puerto Rico, we have 41 states where we have councils. And in addition to Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., we also have something called e-members. And I will tell you that for LULAC, we are 91 years young, 91 years strong, and we were created in Corpus Christi, Texas, at a time when simply coming together could be considered conspiracy, and our community could be hanged, lynched, and killed without ever there being a sense of justice. And for 91 years, LULAC has not only been at the forefront of major cases on the legal side, but also really creative in terms of producing programs for our community. And just to give you a couple of examples, a lot of folks don't know that in 1931, LULAC created our women's office. So we were one of the first major organizations that actually had a dedicated office that was specifically to address issues impacting Latinas, las mujeres. And we were also involved in Orange and Mendez versus Westminster, which integrated public schools in California. In that case was actually taken as the precedent for Brown versus Board. Since then, we were involved in creating something called the Little School of the 400. And why this program is important is because Congressman Johnson at that time, becomes President Johnson and takes the Little School of the 400 model to create Head Start, which has impacted millions and millions of children across all communities across the U.S. So we're really, really proud of that. And today, LULAC continues to protect and defend our community, whether it's from harmful pesticides being used in our farm working communities to making sure that our access to the ballot box is not taken away. Dodge City comes to mind, where they tried to take the only polling location outside of Dodge City, Texas, where we had, unfortunately, the Secretary of State tried to purge 98,000 eligible naturalized citizens from the voter rolls in Texas. And that seems to be actually where we have been focusing on really every single year, just making sure that our rights and our access to the ballot box are not taken. But we work in a myriad of issues, everything from education, healthcare, economic empowerment, civil rights, technology, and the list goes on. And lately, I would tell you, Amy, that we've been very, very busy with COVID-19, and I'm happy to go into that a little bit more later on in the program.
Absolutely. Well, so before we get into that, let's talk about you. Let's talk about your story. And you come from the political world, but it's always been grounded in public service, right? And the work that you do has always been about serving the community. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to LULAC.
Thank you for that question, Amy. And I will tell you and preface it by saying that, oftentimes folks think that you do this by yourself, but the reality is, that, as you become more successful and every single part of your journey is important in getting you there, that, you're always surrounded by people, by community, whether it's your, madrina or political godmother, or whether it's your mom pushing you every step of the way and encouraging you, or whether it's your father or your brothers, or maybe it's a mentor that makes sure to guide and open a door. And then obviously you walk through it and you do all the hard work. And so I will tell you, Amy, that I started, first in the US through my parents. And I want to acknowledge them because, we often times forget the sacrifices that our parents make. And to me, my parents are the original, the first dreamers. Like so many communities, I was actually brought to this country undocumented at the age of 1. And have done everything from picking up cans in the street of Los Angeles to cleaning houses in Northern Virginia, to make sure that, our family got ahead. And I will tell you what a lot of folks don't know, Amy, is that, the simple act of going away to college was a fight in my family, right? And for those hermanitas who are tuning in, my father did not want me to go away from the house to go to college, and my mom was, thank goodness, on my side. But I got accepted into 4 major colleges, universities across the country: Florida, Virginia, 3 of them. And my dad, when the decision was being made, did not want me to go away because he thought I was going to get pregnant, and he was really fearful of what could happen, his only daughter going away. And so thankfully my mom backed me up, Amy, and I went away to Virginia State University, which is a historical Black college, and was far enough that I had to live on campus. So it was about an hour and a half away from home, but close enough that I could come home on the weekends in the summertime and spend it with my parents and enjoy the carne asadas and all the goodness of my mom's cooking. Since then, it was really just being involved. And I think this is where we have to be ever so mindful of our thinking and our mindset. And, the way that I approached not only college, but I think just life, is being open to receiving the different opportunities that come my way. I will tell you that never in my life would I have imagined that I would be leading a national Latino civil rights organization. Never in my life would I thought that I would have been involved in campaigning and politics. Although I did study poli-sci, I actually thought more of the government side of serving. And so public service really has been something that has been the connecting pillar across my entire journey. And it really started at home, Amy. It really started with observing my parents having that open door in our home, where we always invited community and even strangers, and we were trying to figure out how we could be the most helpful, and whether it was words of wisdom or una limonada, or whether it was hosting them in our home, we made sure that we tried to serve. And so I really picked up those granitos from my parents, and I'm so proud that I am their daughter and that they're my parents, and that they're courageous and fearless, and they, also keep me rooted and really planted. And so I'm really appreciative of that. But I would tell, our Mana members, our hermanitas, that, our journeys are so interesting. And I do think if we have the mindset of going at it with a positive attitude, understanding that along this journey, we will have challenges, we will have barriers, you will have your días que tienes que llorar. I understand. I think, we all go through that. But I think it's really how we manage in those moments, how we learn in those moments, that help us in the long run.
Well, your story of going away to college, it resonates so deeply because I had a very similar experience and did something very similar, close enough that my parents felt like they could get to me in an emergency or I could get home on the weekends, but far enough away that I needed to live on campus. So, I love that because it really talks about family and how it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters as long as we're together and we can be together and take care of each other when the time comes. And I think that that resonates with me because so much of that is built into your work, right? And the work that you're doing, because it's not just about your family succeeding. The work that you're doing is about all of our families succeeding. And, I think that that grounding is what brings, and it comes to life, right, in the work that you do, that family perspective. You talked about it, just briefly earlier, Sindy, but COVID is so top of mind right now for all of us. I mean, the fact that we're not having conferences and we're having these conversations virtually, talk to us about the work that you're doing, but then the impacts that you're seeing on the ground. And then as advocates and people in the community, where are the places where we can really put our hands in and help?
I would say, Amy, COVID-19 is having such a disproportionate effect in the Latino community. And we know from Surgeon General Adams that 5 out of 6 Latinos have to leave their houses every single day to work and get paid, which means that we're also being exposed more to COVID-19. And then you add the layer of, Latinos being the essential workers in America, right? We are more than a quarter of all grocery store workers. We also work in the hospital and clinic settings, whether it's as a doctor, a nurse, a technician, as janitors. We are actually in the mix of everything that is occurring. We are also more than 40% of all meat packing plant workers, where we're seeing a disproportionate, again, impact in terms of cases that are occurring across this country. And let's not forget and honor our farm workers who every single day wake up at the peak of dawn to make sure that you and I can enjoy a fresh fruit or vegetable on our plate. I will tell you, Amy, that, since COVID-19 started, it just feels like as Latino leaders and advocates, we're trying to drink an ocean, right? Like before we were drinking out of a fire hose. And right now, with everything that we're seeing, we're really trying to tackle this major issue that's impacting our community. And let me just take a step back and go back to March when we first started seeing this happening in our community. I can tell you that at that time, we had reached out to the CDC to ask for information on COVID-19 in Spanish, and their response was, we don't have it and we don't know when we're going to have it. And so as a result of that, as a civil rights organization, and particularly in my background as an organizer, Amy, we knew that people's lives were at stake. And so we created something called Ayuda en Español, or Help in Spanish, to make sure that our community had the most relevant information regarding COVID-19, everything from, what are the symptoms, to what in the world is social distancing, to how to find your nearest food bank and what is a food bank, to making sure that if you're going through domestic violence, that you know what resources are around you, to how to file for an unemployment claim or benefits. And so, we really try to think comprehensively of the different issues that our community could experience. We're so happy to say that we've updated now for the second time the toolkit. We're getting ready to release it once again, but you can still find the current toolkit on our website, lulac.org/ayuda en español. And part of the situation that we were seeing, Amy, is that, within our community, not only did we not have the information in Spanish provided by the federal government, not only are we the essential workers, not only are we leaving our houses 5 out of 6 every single day to work and get paid and being exposed higher, but we also have the highest number of uninsured or underinsured Latinos. And we immediately jumped into action as a membership organization. Our youngest member is 12 years of age. Our oldest member is 100, just turned 100 in April. And we have members from every single background that you can imagine, including meatpacking workers. And so in March, as COVID-19 was increasing in our communities, we started getting calls from meatpacking workers saying that they were coming into work and that the people that they work with were not showing up, and that they were worried because the companies were not disclosing what was occurring. And what was happening, Amy, is that our community was not only getting COVID-19, but they were also dying. And, LULAC got involved in filing various OSHA complaints. We got involved in doing a major publicity campaign, making sure to call attention to this issue. And thankfully, since then, we've seen improvements within these companies. They still have long ways to go. We still want to make sure that our community has the PPE in locations where they may not have them. But for us, Amy, as we look at COVID-19, it feels like it's a snowball effect, because not only do you have community members who are contracting COVID-19, but you also have community members who are worried about being evicted, especially in the states where the moratoriums have already expired. And so you now see our community members, especially vulnerable communities who may lack status, who are self-evicting. We're looking at the issue of mental health as a very big one. And I just want everyone to imagine, being an hermanita, living in New York City and not coming out of your apartment for months on end, right? And, that's something that's worrisome for us. And as an adult, I can tell you, I'm very fortunate to live in a suburb, to be able to walk around my neighborhood, but not everyone has that luxury. And so we have to be very mindful of that. And then you add the fact that Latino businesses are closing their doors because they don't have access to the PPP program, they don't have access to capital, and what the long-term effect will be. I can also tell you, Amy, we're fighting to make sure that, during this time, people's credit scores are not impacted, because as at this time, it feels like everyone's accumulating debt, especially if you don't have a job, if you can't pay the rent, if you can't pay your credit cards, if you can't pay your card note. And so we're extremely worried about what the long term means for our community. And we're going to continue to fight. We've been doing this not only at the federal level, advocating for our community and the various proposals, including the HEROES Act. We've been doing this at the state level, working with governors to make sure that they're thinking through their strategies and making sure that they also have Latinos represented at the table within the different health task forces that are looking at this issue. We're working with mayors and county executives, as well as local elected officials, to make sure that in the localities we're thinking really holistically about this issue. And so really, Amy, what is it that we're not doing, right? It feels like we're tackling a lot, but I think this is where it takes all of us to be able to make sure that our community is taken care of. And I would say, what can you do? So as a member of Mana One, you can adopt a family. And I think all of us at this point know a family that has suffered COVID-19, that is facing unemployment, that may have a child who does not own a Chromebook or a laptop and is getting ready to go back to school without having the basic technology and tools that they need. I think, the other thing that we can do is really stay connected and remind ourselves as leaders, as advocates, as people that work in our communities, that we also have to make sure to take time out to take care of ourselves so we can be in this in the long run. And I know I can tell you, between Amy, myself, gosh, how many meetings do we cover a day? I can't even tell you, long into the night. But, I think this is where we have to remind ourselves as leaders, as mujeres, that we have to put ourselves first too, so that we can be well, health-wise, mentally, for our community.
I want to pivot just a little bit because LULAC has really been at the forefront of the conversation about Vanessa Guillen. And, in throughout the search for her, and then having found her remains, and then now the follow-up conversation, can you just tell us a little bit about where we are there and where your conversations have been with the Department of Defense?
Sure. So I will tell you that the tragedy of Vanessa Guillen is, something that has resonated with all of our communities across the country. The fact that you had one of our own soldiers not only go missing, but be murdered on a U.S. military base on U.S. soil is unconscionable. And, at the very beginning of this, as we were connecting with Mama Guillen, Miss Gloria Guillen, with Lupe, with Mayra, we wanted to make sure that as a civil rights organization, we were helping to uplift this case. And so I know that Ana Luisa, our local LULAC leader in Kylene, Texas, immediately got involved. In fact, like every single day, every single week, she would go and hold a protest and gathering right in front of Fort Hood. She also helped lead a lot of searches for the body of Vanessa Guillen. And in early June, when Ana Luisa contacted us, she was really worried that they were not paying attention to Miss Gloria Guillen, to her pleas, that she was not getting communication, and that's where LULAC National got involved. We actually ended up putting $25,000 and reward for any information leading to the killer of Vanessa Guillen, not knowing what would be the outcome of this. And we started uplifting this on the media. One of our local LULAC members created the hashtag I am Vanessa Guillen. And what we never imagined, Amy, was that this hashtag would be utilized over and over again by active military members as well as veteran members, sharing their stories of harassment, of assault, of rape that had occurred to them. And we see this as the Me Too movement of the military. And it's unfortunate that 3 and 4 individuals do not report their cases in the military because they are afraid. They're not only afraid for their life, they're afraid of retaliation. And so we find this completely unacceptable. We think that the military, all branches, have to do a better job in making sure that they're keeping our children, our Latinas, our women, everyone safe from this ever occurring again. And we are asking for a congressional investigation. We want to make sure that the Department of Defense and the U.S. Secretary of Army, and that actually all of the branches go into Congress and talk about this issue, because we want change. And the truth is, Amy, we want to make sure that this never happens to another family. We don't want this to ever happen to another individual. And we just find it unconscionable again that this happened in a U.S. military base on U.S. soil in 2020. And so certainly we're going to continue to have these conversations, not only with Congress and uplifting this issue. We've already talked to Secretary McCarthy. We're going to continue to pressure the Department of Defense and the various military branches. We are happy to say that as a result of our efforts, Amy, the Secretary of the Army, did establish an independent panel review to specifically examine the culture at Fort Hood. And, to date, they've had more than 8 deaths occur at that specific base. There is something happening at Fort Hood. We want it investigated, and we were proud to nominate Latinas to serve on that panel, and 2 of them were selected to serve. So we're happy to see Latina representation specifically on this independent panel review within the U.S. Army. But again, we also want a congressional investigation to understand the culture climate, to understand why it is that 3 and 4 individuals do not report harassment, assault, or rape. And we want change. That's exactly what we're asking for.
Absolutely. And so, so much of the conversation right now is so heavy, right? And you likened it to drinking the ocean, right? Not just a fire hose, but an ocean coming at you. But your story is a success story, right? And your continued work is a legacy of success. And so, I want for you to leave our hermanas, our hermanitas, with some words of advice, right? If you could go back to when you were, 11-year-old Sindy or 15-year-old Sindy, what would you, knowing now what you know, what would you tell her to give her sort of the ánimo to keep going?
Gosh, that's such a great question, Amy. And I would say, I think one of the first things that I would tell my younger self is that we have to unlearn everything that we have learned. and relearn it. And, part of sometimes what we don't capture is the narratives that we see, not only in TV, not only in social media, but even in the books that we read. And understanding who is writing those books and with what narrative in mind is important. And the fact is that we need more Latinas writing, we need more Latinas in front and behind cameras, we need more Latinas running for office, we need more Latinas at the board table sitting on corporations and leading nonprofits. And so I would say, I think as Latinas, we have to unlearn everything that we've learned and really re-educate ourselves to make sure that we're thinking independently, that we understand, who is writing what narrative, and that we actually are the creators of our narratives. I would also tell you, Amy, that it's so important that we find our voices. And I really didn't find my voice until really just a few years back. I was always the person that was really happy being behind the scenes, whether it was serving as an advisor to a governor or whether it was leading a national political party behind the scenes across all constituencies. And really, we have to make sure that we get uncomfortable. And there will be many individuals that not only directly, but indirectly tell you that you're not a leader because you're not an extrovert, because you may be not shouting, because, whatever it is that their perception is of leadership. And I just have to remind you that our own perception really matters, and that it's important that we evaluate how we even think about ourselves. But take other people's perception with a grain of salt, and remember that if you're doing good, that your heart is in the right place, that you take those steps to be uncomfortable. And I will tell you that even in accepting this position, Amy, I didn't apply until the very last day. And part of it was that I was a young mama. I had a 1 and a 3-year-old, and I was thinking the sacrifice that it would take. And it really took my husband, reminding me and telling me of all the qualities that I possess, and also asking me if I would regret not applying. And also, I would admit that it was a Sunday and I went to church, and gosh, I mean, like, the sermon literally spoke to me that day. And so I came back home and applied. I never thought I was going to get this job, being, very young, being a millennial, and just thinking even of my own perceptions and biases. But I did end up getting the position. And so in this position, Amy, I think, we're all reminded of the qualities that we possess, reminding ourselves that we're not in this by ourselves, that we have a whole group of individuals who always support and cheer us on, remembering that there will always be people who challenge you, who question you. And to be honest, we have to, be able to let that go to be able to continue on our journey, because it's really getting things done that I think writes history for our community. And at this moment, I think, we not only have to be the narrators of our stories, but also be the ones that take the action. And I would say, as we approach the general elections and people are still, wondering if they should vote or not vote, the greatest act of disobedience that we can all have is to vote. The greatest way that we show up for our community, that we rise up, that we speak out, that we are there, is to vote. The greatest act of defiance is to vote. And then I would also add that after you vote, consider running for office. We need you in this struggle. Our hermanitas, I know nobody tells us, you know, grow up to be a politician and run for office. Well, we need to be thinking about running for office and be thinking about running for office as a career, because now more than ever, we need all of you at the table speaking out. We need our collective voices, our learned experiences, and our own understanding of community to be at that table. And it will not happen if we don't step up to the plate. So with that, Amy, I will say again, one, unlearn what you have learned. Make sure that you are the narrator of the story and taking all those actions that will write history. Vote, 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 and run for office.
Well, Sindy, I can speak for everyone in saying that we are so much richer for having you in a leadership role, for having you on the team, and for having your voice at a national level, really speaking on behalf of our community every single day. Your tireless efforts don't go unnoticed, and we're proud to have you as our hermana, proud of the work you're doing, and support you each and every step of the way. And so we're so glad that you were here with us for our Latina Leaders series. I know that our members have just gotten a master class in leadership from you. So thank you again. We're so proud to have you with us and so proud of the work that you're doing.
Gracias, Amy, and thank you again to all the work that you're doing, and to all the hermanas and hermanitas. Thank you for what you do every single day. It truly makes a difference.